So if I plug in this cartridge, which is battery backed up and has got some data on it, pop it in there and turn that on, you'll see that it's come up with a slightly different message. It's got ready P7, and that's because the program that you were in when you pulled the cartridge out is stored on the cartridge. So you can work on it at work, pull it out, take it home, plug it in, and you're where you were when you pulled the cartridge out. So if I run that program, you can see that it's just drawing a circle very slowly. This is not a fast machine. It's a nice machine to use though, and I'm not really sure why. It might be the display, it might be the cartridges, but it's just got a sort of similar feel to it as the handheld Casio pocket computers, and they're quite nice machines to use. It's not a sort of classic keyboard, and there's no lower case. It's very much set up to do maths, so it's very much a sort of calculator really, or calculator based, but it's just a bit more roomy. The keyboard's a bit bigger and it's not quite so fiddly as the pocket computer versions. So that's running quite slowly. I'll break out of that. But that's a test machine that I was test program that I was using to check that all the picos were fine over a large period of time. And there's the program. You can also go to other program areas, and there's nothing there. Let's see. So I've got quite a few. When you shift to a program area, it actually runs the program. So this one's just displaying some numbers, and that's P1. So if I turn it off, we were in P1, turn it back on, and you're back in P1 again. I haven't found a way of auto running at power on, but that's not a feature that it has. So you can sort of see whether there's anything in the area as to whether anything starts up and runs. Looks like I haven't got very much. There's that one which we've seen. 8 and 9. Yeah, so there looks to be just a couple of... Oh, well, that ran, but it's just comments. That's test data just to make sure everything's okay. So yeah, that's the machine at the moment. Let's put the Pico cartridge in, because that demonstrates an interesting feature of the code. So ordinarily with an emulator, it's a bit slower at starting up if you're doing it with a microcontroller, because you've got the boot time of the microcontroller. So with the RAM cartridge, that's fine, the RAM chip's there from power on. But with the Pico cartridge, I've actually got a startup time of over 9 seconds for this, because I wanted the sequencing of the Picos and the link and so on to be controlled. So at the moment it's an artificially long startup time, but if you turn it on, the 9000 doesn't do anything, and that's because it's got a loop where it's checking for memory. Once the bus Pico has come on the bus, it starts up because the memory is present, and it jumps out of the loop, which is checking memory, and goes, yep, there's memory there now, and boots up, which means you don't need a reset switch, which I did add to this system. I can reset it like that. You don't need that reset switch because there's a sort of built-in loop here which will wait for the RAM to be present. I don't really know why they did it. Probably because when you start up, you detect there's no RAM, there's nothing you can do. The only thing you can do really is just wait for it to appear. So this doesn't have anything stored at the moment. There's no images on there. So at the moment there's a flashing asterisk there. Every time that flashes, another 4K has been copied over from the bus Pico to the sort of user interface SD Pico here, which means that once that's flashed a couple of times, you can press this button here and it saves that image to disk if it's got an SD card in there. Hasn't got one in there at the moment. Must have pulled that out and had a look at something. I've got the Pico cartridge in here, and that's got an SD card in it with a few images of programs. So if I turn it on, the cartridge will eventually allow the 9000 to start up there. There's a little tick. I don't know if it's a relay or just some coils or something in the power supply, but there you go. So it's in P0, there's nothing there in P0. We'll shift to P1, nothing in P1. But if I go into the menu system over here of the Pico cartridge, I can list all the images that I've got, and they're just snapshots of the cartridge memory. And the last one I've got here, I'll load that in, and it will now load it in, and that's now being presented as memory on the cartridge. Now occasionally, as you can see here, it goes wrong after it's loaded. Now I think that's because the stack for the Z80 is actually in the cartridge, which means you're messing up the stack. So really you want to do a break to reset it. Or if you've got a reset switch attached, you can do a reset. Now that's coming up as P1 because that's the last program area we were in when the Pico cartridge had loaded its image and we'd moved to P1. So when you reset, the Pico cartridge doesn't reset and power hasn't been removed, so whatever image was there is there again, and you end up with a sort of clean image and a clean system with a proper stack. So that's really the best way to get the thing to work. You could auto boot from an image on SD card. That would be one way of doing it. But I mean, you can sometimes change and the stack isn't too messed up, or you do a break and it sort of comes back. But if you add a reset switch, then it works much better. I don't see any way around that. There isn't a reset signal on the cartridge slot, so I can't get the Pico to just reset the system. There may be a way of loading all the RAM but leaving the stack unchanged once I know where the stack is, so that's an option. But anyway, if I run P1, there you go, does something. Now I didn't type that in and it was blank. That has come from an SD card image, so it's quite easy to do an image. You just press that button there and then it will finish. And there's another program in P0. If I go there, it just prints a load of numbers out as a test. So if you want to do a snapshot of this, if we go to P2 and then just do P2 and you want to snapshot it, you just press that button down the bottom and that's it. It's written it to disk and it's now the next consecutive number. So what we can do is we can go back on the menu to the image before the one we've just taken. So at the moment we've got stuff in P2, rem P2, but if we load that one up, we'll be back to where we were before we put that program in. And it's still there, of course. So P1, P0 is that program, P1 is that program, and P2 doesn't have anything in it. I'm not sure why the program was still there. That's maybe something to do with the operation of the system. But anyway, this wasn't designed to have these cartridges pulled out from underneath it as it was operating. So if I then go back and load the last snapshot I took, that one there, load that in, P2 should reappear because that's the image that had the P2 in it. Oh, actually it's now read it. Now it's emulating and has copied it over. I think I actually started listing stuff too early, so P2's back. So you can just swap between images, and we'll go back and remove P2. That one there, one before. Right, so it selected the file, it's now reading the file, and at the end now when it goes back probably to the menu there, it's now emulating. So it's gone and we're in P1 because that is the program area we were in when we did the snapshot. So if we go to P2, nothing there because that's in a different snapshot. So it does seem to work, this, but the FX9000P is a little bit unsure of what's going on when you sort of pull the rug out from underneath it. But you can use it, and if you add a reset key, then because you can just reset it, and now you've got a clean stack in the memory which is in the cartridge, and everything's sort of okay again. So that's P1, P0, P1, and P2 has nothing in it. But if we then go and load the last image, wait for it to actually load, that's the mistake I was making. Right, now it's sent it over to the other Pico. We can then, yeah, so the stack's a bit messed up, you can list it, P2's back. So if you do a reset, you're in P2, and there it is. So if you go to P7 and do a reset, you're still in P7 because the cartridge hasn't been reset. So it would be useful having the reset button, I think, to get a clean startup from images, a quick clean startup.